Okay, so you got a notification that says it's recording?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I think it says I'm recording, but you don't have a notification that says anything.
No, I don't see anything now about recording. Oh, yes, Youri is recording the call.
Okay, perfect. All right, that means, ladies, that means everybody, welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. And we are rejoined by our returning champion, the eco-socialist, the anti-imperialist, all-around people power activist and journalist, and Dimitri Lascaris, former correspondent of the Real News Network, where he covered all things Canada and the environment. And Dimitri, and before I get to my first question, you are also yes, you also ran for the leadership of the Green Party. You didn't, and of course you almost got there, second place with the ranked choice voting, and you're still a member of the Green Party, trying to transform it to an eco-socialist party. And before I get to my first question, you also started a new organization called greenleft.ca, right?
Green Left Canada, yes.
Yes, and briefly, if you can, just explain though, yeah, what Green Left Canada is and what you and your like-minded eco-socialists are trying to do with Green Left Canada.
Well, so as you indicated, I finished second in the Green Party of Canada leadership race, and out of 8 candidates, we came very close to winning because we were actually the voting had to go to 8 ballots, and on the 5th ballot, I was actually ahead. The reason why I mention this is because we ran on an explicitly eco-socialist platform. And a lot of people at the beginning were skeptical that anybody who openly identified as an eco-socialist or a socialist could win the leadership of a party that is represented in Canada's parliament. And we came extremely close. And, some would say that, that we had a number of obstacles thrown in our way by the party establishment. I won't get into that. That's a long story. But I think the fact that we got so close to winning, despite those obstacles, openly campaigning on an eco-socialist platform was very encouraging. And a lot of people who identify as eco-socialists were surprised by the fact that we came so close to winning despite the obstacles thrown in front of us. So we really felt strongly, people on my campaign team, and these are people, with whom some of them are traditionally been Green, some of them come from other parts of the left. I've known them for years, love them deeply. We've fought many battles for social justice and the environment together.
Yeah.
And we got together and said, what are we going to do about this? I mean, we can't just walk away from what we've built. So we decided to start this new organization, Green Left Canada, whose overarching mission is to advocate for the adoption of eco-socialist policies at all levels of government in Canada. And there are 8 co-founders. Everybody was a core member of my campaign team. We're going to be opening up the organization soon to membership. And today we had some good news. One of the first things we did, actually pretty much the very first thing we did when we launched our website, was issue a set of endorsements to party members, Green Party members, about the current policy process, which the Green Party launched in November of last year and will conclude in November of this year. And we put forward approximately 15 eco-socialist policies. And today the electronic voting results were published.
Yeah.
And I think it was 11 out of the 15 received so much support that they will be adopted without further discussion at the convention in November. One of them, just to give you a sample of what we're talking about, one of them actually is a policy on taxing extreme wealth, and it explicitly calls for a wealth cap above which persons would be taxed at a rate of 100%. So to add, this actually creates the possibility of eliminating billionaire status. And I don't know of a political party.
Plutocrats, you better be afraid.
And I don't know of a political party in Canadian history, at least of the parties that have had, seats in Parliament, that has ever adopted a policy calling for a hard cap on wealth accumulation. So, we're very excited about this and many other policies. That's another discussion. But this is what we're all about. We want to see eco-socialism become a reality for the people of this country. And I think that we've made a good start.
All righty, and that's a perfect segue to the issues I wanted to talk to you about, which is climate change, and not from how I normally tackle climate change, which is imperialism and so forth. Although we will get into that. But the first question I wanted to ask you then, Dimitri, is regarding the ongoing climate crisis. I don't know if you got the chance to read an article I sent you of Whitney Webb back when she was part of Minpress News, and in her investigative piece she described Alexandria Ocasio Cortez's Green New Deal and the Democrats that supported it, the liberal wing of the establishment that supported it, and that some of the progressives and socialists in the U.S. that supported it, as being sort of gaslit by AOC's Green New Deal, because it allows private banks to still run the shows. It allows cap and trade, and I think it's best if you explain people what cap and trade is and why that's problematic. Doesn't end militarism, and my problem, of course, with a lot of the Green New Deals we've been hearing about is that it doesn't address how we consume our food in a sustainable manner, transition radically off our meat consumption, and Whitney Webb was saying in her article that AOC's Green New Deal was still far too capitalist, and of course, green capitalists, we know that that's an oxymoron, as we need to be, explicitly, eco-socialist if we want to continue to live on this planet. So, any thoughts on that?
Well, the cap and trade system you mentioned, is essentially the concept is the government places a limit on the amount of greenhouse gases that can be emitted within the jurisdiction, and people are then corporations are then afforded the opportunity to buy and sell what are in effect pollution credits, the right to pollute. And the thought is that this will, incentivize corporations to become less, to lower their carbon footprint. And if they want to be able to continue to pollute, they're going to have to pay a price for it, and it's going to be increasingly steep as time goes by. But there are a number of problems with this in terms of market transparency, market manipulation, the kinds of problems you encounter in a capitalist so-called free market context routinely. So I personally am not a big fan of cap and trade. I think having a cap and trade system is better than having nothing at all to deter the emission of greenhouse gases. But it can make a contribution if it's properly regulated and transparent. A big if, but it's not enough. The bottom line is that if we leave the resolution of the climate crisis to the corporate sector and to the market, we're doomed.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just doomed. We have to be unapologetic about saying that resolution of the climate crisis requires massive government intervention in every conceivable respect. So first of all, the government, personally, I believe that the government should take over the oil and gas industry. The people who are running this industry have a vested interest in perpetuating humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. And as long as they are calling the shots, they are going to do everything that they can, including, misleading the public about the nature of the crisis we confront, misleading the public about the environmental impact of their fossil fuel operations and so forth. They're going to do everything they can to perpetuate that dependency. The only way to effectively wind down the fossil fuels industry is to take it over and to put in charge of the industry persons who are appointed by government, democratically selected, and who are determined and mandated to shut the industry down as fast as humanly possible, but in an orderly way to minimize hardship to the many workers who depend directly and indirectly on the fossil fuels industry. And this can be done, but it will not happen as long as the industry is in control of fossil fuel reserves and the extraction refinement and sale of fossil fuels. So, also we need to have, we can't simply rely upon private enterprise to make the necessary investments to develop renewable energy infrastructure. The government has to take charge and has to commit massive amounts of money, not the kinds of paltry sums you're seeing, a few billion here and a few billion there, but sums that are of historic nature. The kind of money that you're hearing battered about with respect to, one of the infrastructure packages, the Bernie Sanders one, I think it is. We're talking about something in the range of several $1 trillion immediately. Needs to be deployed immediately to convert our economy to a system of renewable energy and to retrofit our buildings and greatly enhance public transportation, which, by the way, should be made free. We need to do everything we can conceivably to encourage people to take public transportation and deter people from buying vehicles, particularly combustion engine vehicles.
Exactly.
So the bottom line is any plan or program that relies upon the goodwill of the fossil fuels industry and the capitalist class is doomed to failure and will result ultimately, I believe, in our planet becoming unlivable, perhaps even within the lifetimes of our children. There's never been an occasion or a crisis with respect to which government intervention was more needed than the climate crisis.
That is a perfect segue then to my second question, which is, can you reflect on the findings of the film Planet of the Humans? And again, I don't know if you saw our mutual friends, frequent guests on the show, Eve Engler's response to those in the Green Movement's efforts to suppress the film. Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone did an investigation into that as well, and the thesis of Planet of the Humans and Eve Engler's defense of the film, Max Blumenthal's defense of the film, and pushing back against those in the Green Movement and sort of the Green left celebrity movements, trying to suppress the film. I mean, the basic thesis was that the environmental movement has effectively been co-opted by the fossil fuel industry and other anti-ecological industries. So, what are your reflections on the findings of Planet of the Humans, Josh Fox and Naomi Klein's efforts to suppress the film, and a lot of the your thoughts on all of that?
Just to say, I want to say at the outset that I am passionately opposed to censorship. Passionately opposed to censorship. Like I don't think they should have. Just to give you an example, I think Donald Trump is a monster and an absolutely reprehensible human being who's grossly unfit to be the mayor of my local post office, let alone the mayor of the president of the most powerful country in the world. But I think it was wrong for him to be removed from social media. First of all, not everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is a lie. Much of it is shameless lies. But sometimes the man speaks the truth, and we should have, I don't know anybody who always lies or, any politician who always tells the truth. We should leave it up to the populace to decide for themselves with free, open, and vigorous debate what is true and what is not. And that applies equally to this film. So just as a matter of principle, no one should be making any efforts to suppress that film. It raises important questions. I don't agree necessarily with the nature and extent of the criticisms that were leveled against some of the people within the environmental movement. For example, Bill McKibben. I don't think that Bill McKibben has become, I don't think this at all, that he's become a tool of the fossil fuels industry. He's been co-opted by the corporate sector. Like many people, he may have made some misjudgments early in his career, and maybe even today there are things he's doing which are legitimately open to criticism. But to characterize him as being a puppet of the fossil fuels industry, I think it's grossly unfair. At the same time, that does not say that Bill McKibben doesn't deserve some criticism.
Or Naomi Klein, for that matter. And Lord knows, I can tell you I have my criticisms towards both Naomi Klein and Avi Lewis, but continue on with what you were saying. Yeah,
and I just picked one. Like, we could probably find things to criticize in leading figures from all the leading figures in the environmental movement. But That said, even though I disagree with it, first of all, they have the right, in my view, as citizens to express their views, and they shouldn't be prevented from doing that. And secondly, they made a lot of valid points. So we are not sufficiently mindful of the environmental impact of things that are being held out as our salvation. Things like solar energy and wind energy, and other forms of renewable energy. These too have an environmental impact, something that's very rarely talked about in the mainstream environmental movement, and especially in the corporate press. So this movie, I think one of the virtues of the movie was that it alerted us to that reality and highlighted the need to actually reduce our energy consumption. We have to actually reduce our economic activity. We have to reduce not just our energy consumption, all of our patterns of consumption. We have to reimagine what growth is all about. And in terms of conventional concepts of growth, we need to be talking about degrowth, rather than looking at conventional concepts of economic growth as the ultimate measure of health in our economy. This is destroying the planet.
Yeah.
What I liked about the movie was that it really highlighted some important issues that are being neglected for whatever reasons by the environmental community, whether it's co-option, whether, I think there's some fear within the environmental community of advocating for things like lower consumption levels because people really don't like that. That's a hard sell. Telling people that you're going to have to actually sacrifice and exercise restraint, especially people in our society who are not particularly well off, that's a hard sell. And I get that, but it's a message that we have to communicate because it's the reality we confront. And what we should be doing is devising a way of dealing with these issues that is equitable, so that people who are least positioned to make the kinds of sacrifices that are necessary don't have to bear that burden. And the people who are best positioned to bear those sacrifices bear those sacrifices. So that's the way to address this very difficult subject of, how we are going to have to alter our patterns of behavior in order to overcome this crisis. So, bottom line is, I think that movie has played an important function. I don't agree with everything that it said. I think we should heed its message carefully with a critical eye and never suppress others, especially people we know to be well-intentioned, like, Michael Moore. Michael Moore, his intentions are pro-humanity. He's putting, even if he doesn't always get it right, his goal is not to serve the oligarchy, but to serve the interests of people in general, and especially the most vulnerable members of our society. And I think it's vital that those voices be heard.
Perfect response, and I'll make sure to post a link to Eve and Max Blumenthal's article defending the film and criticizing those on the environmental movement. And that's a great segue then to this third question of mine, which is, when I watch, a documentary like Planet of the Humans, or I watch a documentary like Cowspiracy, Meet the Truth, Seaspiracy, End of the Line, and knowing all the forms of, knowing that all forms of militarism and imperialism are leading causes of climate change. And of course, you read books like Eve and Bianca Mugeni's book, Stop Science, Cars and Capitalism on the Road to Economic and Social and Ecological Decay. Then you read Whitney Webb's article criticizing AOC's Green New Deal. For me, it seems as if there is no hope to save, to save the planet. And I remember watching Democracy Now! Covering the COP 21, and Amy Goodman spoke with a climate activist, a climate scientist, who said that many environmentalists their findings show that actually we've passed the point of no return. There's no hope for humanity, and they're even self-censoring their findings. So, given all of that, is there really any hope for the planet? And if we are past the point of no return, does that mean that all we can do is still try to transition to a green, sustainable, ecological, socialist economy. But that's only just going to give like the Earth's lungs just a few more decades to live. But that eventually we are going to face the impending climate apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say first of all that this has been a grim summer. It's been a very, very grim summer. And seeing the devastating heat waves, and especially what happened in Western Canada, where where heat records were not simply beaten, they were demolished. The highest temperature ever recorded in Canada happened in Lytton, BC this summer. I believe it was near 49 degrees Celsius. And this was not tenths of a degree above the prior record. This was several degrees above the prior record. And then that town, Lytton, British Columbia, the very next day was incinerated by a wildfire. And, a couple of other pieces of news, just of the many grim pieces of news. Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, which is a man-made reservoir constructed in the 1930s, very important to the provision of water in the western states, is at the lowest level it has ever been since it was constructed in the 1930s. California is going through a punishing drought. You've seen the wildfires in Greece and Turkey, the floods in Germany and Belgium.
Yep. Yeah. And my family, we were lucky that we avoided that bullets, but southern Belgium was completely destroyed. Yeah.
The images were shocking. I can't imagine what it's like to actually live in the region.
Yeah.
And of course, Turkey just experienced devastating floods. I could go on. And so, to be perfectly blunt about it, I'm probably not of the view any longer that we are likely going to resolve this crisis, but I'm not of the view that we're doomed. And my own belief is and always has been that even if we only have, and I don't think it's this low, even if we only have a 10% chance or a 5% chance of resolving the crisis, we have an obligation, we have a duty to our fellow human beings and our children and to subsequent generations to do everything humanly possible to resolve it. So, I think the odds are probably against us at this stage, but I do believe that this is not a lost battle, and that all of this simply underlines the absolute pressing, primordial urgency of dealing with this crisis in dramatic transformational ways. I think it's not helpful to talk about there being a point of no return. First of all, I think in the real world, you can't say that there's a specific point at which the battle is lost because, for example, we know that humanity has extraordinary innovative abilities, and there may be technologies that will be developed that haven't even been imagined yet. For example, that can remove, greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. We shouldn't count on that happening because those technologies don't exist, and it's far from clear that we'll ever develop them. So we have to deal with what we know, and we do have the technological ability to resolve the crisis at the current time. But even if it were true that we're very, very close to being in a position of not being able to resolve the crisis with existing technologies, there may be others in the future. So we can't really say that there's a point at which the battle is entirely lost. I don't think we're there. I don't think we'll necessarily ever be able to say that we're there. As long as the planet there are livable places on this planet. This is a battle that we have the obligation to fight, and I'm going to fight it tooth and nail. I mean, for no other reason, I have 2 children. So for me, I don't have the luxury of throwing up my hands and saying I'm going to go sit by a pool and sip pina coladas until the day that I die. So that's the way. I don't want to. I don't really regard myself as an optimist or a pessimist. I try to be a realist, and I think that this is the reality of the world in which we currently live.
All right, interesting. And I still have some time with you. So my so one of my last question is so so if there is some hope, as you've just laid out, and we can avoid some of the worst effects of climate change and fight against imperialism, which is one of the great climate evils that that comes with this crisis. And of course, you have the situation of the West continuing its war for oil and mining in Venezuela. There's the possibility Lula might return to power in Brazil. We see left-leaning governments of Peru, Mexico, Bolivia, and Argentina, and similar nations. But of course, now, do you think there still is a way that we can help resist them being targeted by the fossil fuel industries and the mining industries, in which in which Green Left Canada can be advisors to all of these left-leaning governments and say to them, hey, if you want to avoid not only climate change but endless Western imperialism, you need to transition off of the fossil fuels and some of the other industries which is making the powers to be targeting you. And so I just wanted your reflections on on that, if that made any sense.
As a matter of fact, Green Left was just invited to participate in a conference organized by the Venezuelan government dealing with the climate crisis.
Interesting.
So we are very encouraged by what's happening in Latin America. You mentioned Pedro Castillo, the leftist in Peru, Lula. Despite all odds, the socialist governments of Venezuela and Cuba have survived the economic war being waged upon them by the United States and its allies. The Mexican president just gave a speech in which he was praising Simón Bolívar and talked about the need for Central and South American countries to develop their own, to pursue their own destiny and to work cooperatively with each other, and for the United States to butt out, although he was more diplomatic. So yeah. One of the things that gives me hope is what's happening in Latin America. The pink tide is returning, and few of us would have thought, after Evo Morales was tossed out of office, and we had the fastest Bolsonaro in power in Brazil, and on and on. Few of us would have thought that we would see the return of socialist and social democratic governments in South America and Central America this quickly. So I think we need, look, one of the fundamental tenets of eco-socialism is that our problems cannot be solved through nationalism. The crises we confront don't respect boundaries. The quintessential international crisis is the climate crisis. And we need to work cooperatively with all of the countries of the world, but particularly the major emitters, for example, China and Russia. Mm-hmm. And as long as we are saber rattling and talking about containment of these countries, surrounding them with military bases, hurling false accusations against them like they engineered Donald Trump's victory in the 2016 election, we are
supporting reactionary separatist movements in Hong Kong and Xinjiang, or Navalny in Russia, and of course the NATO-backed neo-Nazis of Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. These imperialistic and militaristic approaches to dealing with other countries, and particularly major emitters, will doom us all. We have to deal cooperatively, diplomatically, and peacefully with these states in order to resolve this crisis, and that should be our highest priority. And not only do we need to have international détente to resolve the crisis, but the carbon footprint of Western militaries is absolutely gigantic.
Yep.
The amount of pollution they're producing is shocking. And there's the direct and their indirect pollution. Their actual war machines emit huge amounts of greenhouse gases. But in addition, after they destroy things, those things need to be rebuilt. And that also creates a very significant amount of carbon. The destruction itself, and then the rebuilding process creates greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah. So we have to eliminate that source of I say often, and I plan to write a paper on this soon, that we cannot resolve the climate crisis without demilitarization. They go hand in hand.
Exactly.
You know, and so this idea that Western governments have that you can continue to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars on your military and have a sustainable planet is sheer lunacy. So we have to make that linkage at every possible opportunity, speaking to our fellow citizens, between militarism and imperialism on the one hand and the destruction of the planet on the other. The two go hand in hand, and we must end militarism in order to save our planet.
Well, Dimitri, I think it's been 30 minutes, so I think I have to let you go now, don't I?
Unfortunately, I need to deal with some other less enjoyable tasks than speaking to you. I'd love
well, folks, we were joined on this edition of 1+1 with Dimitri Lascaris, the brilliant eco-socialist, independent journalist and activist. And you heard it from Dimitri. It's not all doom and gloom. There still is a chance that we might. There still is a chance we might be able to give our planet Earth's lungs a couple of more decades to live. Dimitri, yes, you know what? I'll get in touch with you again, and because there's some more questions I wanted to talk to you about, and of course with Disruption Canada, I know that you will be busy. Not only trying to get eco-socialist Greens elected into Parliament, but you, Eve Engler, and so forth, well, I know, and your colleagues will also be confronting the warmongers of all the major parties. So we're going to definitely have to have you back on soon, hopefully, to discuss all that. But until then, best of luck with everything, and I look forward to speaking to you whenever, whenever it's possible.
Always a pleasure, Youri. Take care, brother.
Likewise.